So I've had a few people online notice my Ford Lightning truck and have asked for a review on it, which I've wanted to do, but it takes time and energy, and so I just never got around to it. I don't have any sponsors or anything to gain out of this review except that people asked for it. And we'll start with this truck. I've absolutely loved the Ford Lightning. I'm big on electric vehicles. My brother and I used to own an engineering firm that specialized in hybrid vehicle designs, battery design solutions for the EV market. Sold that company. So I know the space, I know the dirty secrets, I know the really cool things that are happening, but my review is not based on any of that. My review in this case is just based on my experience. I'm not giving a review on a truck that I drove for a weekend. I want to give you a review that is my experience with this truck over 1 year's time and just broke 20,000 miles. So first off, I love the EV space. In 2021, I bought the Tesla Model X, loved it. In 22, we bought my wife the Tesla Model Y, absolutely loved it. In 23, I bought this Ford Lightning and thought it would be the truck and the runaround, and I would keep my Model X. I liked this truck so much, I got rid of the Model X, and it may surprise you that this is actually quieter and smoother significantly than my Model X, which for me is a big thing. That's one of my favorite things about electric vehicles is I don't want to hear the road, I don't want to hear the engine, I don't want to hear shifting, I don't want to hear anything but my music and the people I'm talking to in the vehicle. And I used to be into the big lifted trucks, and you had noisy tires and a lot of wind noise, and you turned up your music, and if you wanted to talk with someone, you turned down the music. And with the EV market, I want to be able to have the music quietly in the background and still have a conversation and never hear the tires, which incidentally is why I didn't take delivery of my Tesla truck. I was really excited about it until I drove it, and it's just noisy. And for me, I think most of that is those big off-road tires, which is very cool, but I like silent. So the Ford Lightning, I think one of the reasons it rides so much better is it has a lot of sidewall here, and the Teslas are a very sporty vehicle. They handle amazing. It would be fun to get out on the track and crank on corners, but the day-to-day driver, when you don't have a lot of sidewall, every little bump and crack in the road, especially on a concrete highway where there's all those splits, it's just da-dun, 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 and I don't like that. The bigger sidewall and a bigger tire on this, you just don't feel it, you don't hear it, it's silent. So that was one of the reasons I got rid of my Model X and just started driving this regularly. Another thing I've loved about this is the frunk. It's big enough to be usable. The Tesla's, the frunk is cool, and I used it kinda, but just out of habit I'd use the back. Once I got a big frunk on this, I find that I don't hardly use the truck bed except for really big things. When I'm running to the hardware store, I open this, I put sacks of concrete in there, I put groceries in there, I put anything in there, and it's not like in the bed of a truck where you step on the brake and it all goes in front of the truck bed, and then when you get home you have to climb up into the truck and in and out of the truck to unload it. I just absolutely love that, so it's hard for me to go back to another vehicle. The other thing with the truck is I really worried about range, and I kind of got rid of range anxiety with the Teslas because you get used to the fact that 300 plus miles is plenty for most people. If you look at how many miles you drive a year, you just don't hit 300 miles a day. Obviously, you go on trips where you hit a lot more than that, and then you have an issue. For us, we've always thought we'll have another vehicle that's gas if we want to go on road trips, but we just don't go on road trips much. So the gas vehicle just never gets driven. We're always driving the all-electric. So the other thing I really, really liked about this truck and have loved about it is it's fast, like ridiculously fast. 3.80 to 60 is what this one does, model and make, and it really does that. And that's smoking everybody I've raced. I know there's exotics that'll beat that, but stoplight to stoplight in a truck that hauls lumber and junk up to the cabin, it's amazing. So my honest opinion of this truck to date, after 20,000 miles, is my favorite vehicle of my entire life. I've absolutely loved it. The range, 330 miles, is pretty realistic. I've averaged over 20,000 miles, 2.2 miles per kilowatt. And so I want to say that's about 300 miles. They advertise 335, 336, but I get on it a little bit more. If I'm just on the highway, it's not quite that good. The electric vehicles get better mileage in town where you don't have a lot of wind resistance on the vehicle than they do on an open highway doing 75, 85. But realistically, 250 miles, 240 miles on the highway, 300 miles average highway city driving is real. And that's plenty of range. Now, where it really struggles, and I'm sure you've heard it before, and I found it, I've got ATV trailers back here and snowmobile trailers, and we like to pull them. We want to go to the cabin, and suddenly I go from 2.2 miles per kilowatt down to 1.1 miles per kilowatt. And for me, that's just under the threshold of being able to get my ATVs or my snowmobiles up to the cabin and back. So I can drag a trailer up the mountain to the cabin and leave it there and make it back, or I can bring a trailer back from the cabin and drive up there with that one, but I cannot do the round trip. So I have a Ford F450 dually. It's a 2023, I think, and that's what we've been using, but I don't like driving it. I would much rather drive a quiet electric vehicle. So that's the thing on that. The other thing I really, those are things I've loved. The things I don't like about it is it looks like a Ford work truck. And I hate that. I want something that looks cool. And it's a Lightning, and it's not a cheap truck. And it's high tech. But you just, the look back experience, you know, when you get a new car and you're walking away from it into a store and you kind of look back and you're like, that's my car. And that sense of pride, you don't get that with this. You look back and go, it just looks like the F-150 work truck that the plumber has 20 of. It's just boring. And the 20-inch wheels kind of help, but they're not my favorite. The other thing is the grill's terrible. I don't know how that happened. It just looks weak to me and ugly. So these are prideful things, and it shouldn't matter. When you're in the vehicle, it's silent, it's fast, it's super comfortable. I love everything about it, but I hate getting out and walking away and going, yeah, I'm driving an old plumber's work truck. So, and I've been able to set that aside and just love the truck. But I tend to replace my vehicles when I'm in a position to do it financially about every year or two. And so the electric vehicles have been that way for me. And so my next truck to try, and I ordered a while ago, was this new GMC. And it has a lot of things that I really liked about it. And my goal was to do kind of like I've always done. When I bought this, I didn't sell my Tesla. I bought this, drove both of them for a while, and then decided I would sell the Tesla and keep this. And so this was the same thing. I'll get the GMC and have the Lightning, and whichever one I like the most is the one I'd keep. So we've got this one. We've had it for a little bit. We've been able to put some miles on it, and there is some really neat features on this that are quite compelling over the Lightning. Let's go over some of the things where the Lightning wins. The Lightning is smoother ride, noticeably quieter than that GMC. And I think part of that is the big tires on here, not as much sidewall as on here. It's a 24-inch rim. So you get a pretty thin sidewall, and so you feel a little bit more of the road. But it's actually a 35-inch tall tire, so it's going to be good for off-road or taking curbs or rocks. I do off-road in my vehicles, but it's not real off-roading. It's dirt road to the cabin and back, and snowy roads to the cabin. It's not like rock crawling, which isn't what these are for anyway. The other thing I've noticed is that truck is notably faster. And I know they say 3.8, and this one in 0 to 60 is 4.5. That sounds close. It's not. Like, this thing sets you in your seat and keeps you there till 106.9 miles per hour, which is where it's governed. So you'll see it hit 107 and just stop and then sit at 106. But once 106.9 is kind of where it sits. This truck, it's a lot heavier. That's an aluminum body, this is a steel body, and it has a lot more battery, which is a plus. But if you're like, I just want to rip and smoke other sports cars around town with a truck, the Lightning's gonna do it. Aluminum body and 135 kilowatts worth of battery, which is a lot of battery. Steel body, but over 200 kilowatts worth of battery. So it's much heavier and you feel it. The other thing is the Lightning, no matter what you do, when you mash it, it just goes straight. If you turn, it stays steady and stable. This truck, it has torque steer. And I don't know how they missed that and how Ford got it so beautiful and how Chevy or GMC didn't. But this truck, when you just smash it, it starts pulling right. And if you try to correct, then it pulls hard left. And it almost feels like you're a little bit out of control. You don't like flooring it, especially if you're coming out of a corner and accelerating in front of traffic. That thing, it goes right where you point it and you feel nothing in the steering wheel and there's no torque steer or torque pull. This thing, you will make your passengers nervous if you just mash it on a corner, because you'll do this. And I don't know how they missed that, but I don't like that about this. So smoother ride, quieter ride, much faster, no torque steer. But coming over to this one, that big battery, this thing advertises 335, 336 miles, I forget, but that's what I see when I take it every morning with a full charge. I get more like 250 to 300. This truck here advertises 440. I'm getting 450. Like, that big battery is insane. And where it really comes into a difference for me is this truck can pull either my 2 RZRs in a trailer or my snowmobiles and snow bike in a trailer. It can go all the way to the cabin and back with a bunch of battery left over. And that's a big deal, because for me, a truck should be able to pull the trailer. With that truck, I have to have my F450 for the toys. And with this truck, I don't. And I'm not doing big long trips like going to Lake Powell and that kind of thing. For those people, you're gonna want a gas vehicle. But for me, if I'm taking a boat to the lake and it's just an hour and a half away and an hour and a half back, and it's gonna do it. And that's a big thing. So we'll go over a few other things on the truck. Obviously the looks, this on the outside looks like a premium vehicle, and it feels like a premium vehicle. This light on the Ford looks cool at night, and in the daytime looks like a kid's toy to me. I know some people may really like that. The headlights look kind of small and cheesy, but honestly at night they're really quite bright and work well. This looks more like a Cadillac Escalade to me. The stainless steel, the lighting. At night this GMC lights up, and in a super cool way. When it's charging, these lights here are stepping up. It has curb appeal. Now this is even the truck side by side. This is in kind of a low ride mode, which this, you don't have that ability to change anything. This truck has leveling suspension, and I can hit a button for off-road and it lifts at 4 inches and it turns into a huge truck, which from my old lifted truck days, I still like that. And so at the highest height, you have to be under 30 miles an hour. If you go over 30, it just drops it to the next level down. It has 4 levels of ride height, and it has several levels of ride comfort, sport mode and tour mode, a normal mode, and those all work. It also has different steering levels. I was hoping on the steering adjustment, and this doesn't have any of those features, but on the steering adjustment, you can have sport steering, normal steering, or tour steering. I was hoping on tour steering it would not have that torque steer, or that one of the modes wouldn't, but it's just the nature of the geometry or how much torque they're putting to the front tires as opposed to the back. This just, if you mash on it and you're in that launch kind of mode, it's all over, and that isn't. So looks way better on this on the outside and on the inside as well. I loved the looks of the Lightning on the inside until I got in this, and you get in this and you feel like you're in a Cadillac Escalade. It is premium. Every stitch, every feature, every color, all the accents are amazing. And so from liking that interior to driving this and realizing what can really be done with the GMC. The second I got back in this truck, I just went, oh my heck, how did I like that? It's just because I didn't have the contrast. So we'll show you the inside and you kind of see the difference. Of course, art is subjective. You may go, I like the Ford interior better, I like this better. But when you actually sit and touch and feel, there's a big difference. Another thing, the Ford shifters, this big clunky thing, and even after 20,000 miles, sometimes I grab it and it doesn't shift and I have to take the pressure off and pull the handle and pull it again. And it's a nightmare when you're trying to do a 3-point turn, like flipping around and there's traffic coming and you have to get it in reverse quick. This thing, you're like, oh no, it won't go to reverse. Let go. Okay, relax, do it slow. Whereas this, you got a little shifter on the handle. It's not using up any of your center console space, and it's just a flip with the finger. And it's like in reverse and on the gas and in forward and on the gas, and it's immediate. There's no clunky lever to play with. I've always hated the shifter on this. And it's not doing anything mechanical, but it feels very mechanical and it feels very plastic, and I always feel like I'm gonna break it. But 20,000 miles, in all fairness, I never broke it. I just hated it. So the shifter on this up on the console, I like a lot better. The other thing is the Ford, a lot of your controls are really on the touchscreen, which is fine, I guess. But I do like this where you have the touchscreen, but also the things you use all the time, like your temperature controls, to have a switch that you can go up and down on the temperature instead of touching a screen and seeing something pop up and sliding or rolling the dial. I just want to go a little warmer, a little cooler without having to do multiple things with the screen. I just like the physical switch and the touchscreen integration, so that's better. Now, let's go over some of the things that are super different. I mean, as if miles and range isn't a really big difference, and ride height and suspension. Let's show you some of the stuff I really like. All right, so what makes a truck a truck? And one is towing capability. We talked about the fact that with so much more battery on this truck than the Lightning, you actually can tow and go do the weekend trips. But for me, the other thing is a truck bed. I love my Ford Dually, my F450 long bed, because I can put anything in the truck bed. I hate parking it. It takes up a lot of space, and these days I swear cities are just making parking stalls smaller and smaller and shorter, so you always have your tail end sitting out everywhere. But there are times you still want to carry that full 4x8 sheet of plywood or sheetrock, but to do that you have to really have a long truck until this. So this is one of those things that for me, it's going to seem awkward and clumsy because I've only done this once before, but that's okay. This all folds down and gives you hard plastic storage. I'm going to climb through here. There we go. This is really being clumsy, but I'd walk around if we weren't filming. So that all folds down, but then you've got this other button here, and it lets you access the truck bed on the inside. And you can do that on a partial or full. And this truck comes with a tonneau cover. They have a hard one. This is the fabric one. I'm going to replace it. But now from the short bed length and easy to park and drive vehicle, from there to here is 9 feet. And I've got more than 4 feet between the wheel wells. So now all of a sudden I can put full sheets of plywood in, and they're covered. They're out of the snow, they're out of the rain or the dust and dirt. They're locked up. People aren't going to see them and steal them. So for me, this is one of the coolest things I've ever seen. Some of you are familiar with the old Chevy Avalanche had that. We had one of those. This is quite an improvement since those days. There's another thing you can do here is this window comes out. They've got this little catch so it won't fall. This drops down into here and locks. And then we can push this button again, and even this big cross member came out. So now we're completely open. This cover can open up and you've got space to stack tall and deep. So this to me is amazing. I personally think I'll always just leave the window in, but there are times it might be really stacking up the lumber tall and want all that space, and it can come into here. So now you have the ease and parking and in the garage of a regular short bed truck, but you have more space than a long bed. Let's look at the back. All right, so coming back to the truck. Now this truck bed has been out for a while. I just personally haven't ever owned it, and I never understood the value of it besides a step. But it's a lot more than a neat step, which Ford has on theirs. First off, it has this where you can fold this down, and it's got this hard plastic liner. It seems really durable, so you can stick lumber in here and not have it slide around the corner. Those of you who have done construction know what I'm talking about, where you're like, oh, it'll stay still. And then you go around the corner and all of a sudden a 2x4 that was sticking out here sideways swings around and you're like, ah, chaos is about to happen. So this kind of locks it in so you can have that stuff out. Now I have that open. You could put 12 footers in this thing at this point now, and they're only sticking out this far and they can't escape. So that's a really neat feature. And then you can hit this button and drop it like a regular tailgate. But here's another feature. If you want, and this is a cargo secure, you pull this up, it gives you a hard stop here. So when you got other equipment in here and you're stacking taller, you've got a hard edge so things don't slide out the back, which to me is just another amazing thing. And I can hit one more button and drop that down. It goes from cargo restraint to step in and out of the truck. So this tailgate system is with the integrated pass-through into the cab fold down seats. The truck's a transformer, and it's not just cool as a transformer, it's actually useful. Those of you that have hauled a lot of gear or done construction like I have, you know what I'm talking about. You're seeing this and going, oh my gosh, that was smart. So now this one has this cover that you roll up. I don't like them. I'm going to go to the hard flip cover. These just to me are clumsy. I'm sure some of you are good with it. I'm not. I like the hard cover, so that's what I'm going to switch to. But I wanted to point out these power supplies over here. On the inside, we've got two 120 volt 20 amp plugs, and then we've got a 230 volt 30 amp plug. So, and then I've also got one up in the front. So as a power supply to run a construction site, or you're camping or plug things in, it's got a ton of power. And because we're over 200 kilowatts of battery instead of 135 like on the Lightning, now you're in the world where you're like, okay, I can show up on a job site, run air compressors, run welders, do a big job up, say, at a cabin where you don't have power, you're completely off grid, and then still drive home. And not just like run it down to whatever your parameter is where it stops giving you power. So I've got mine set when the batteries get down to 20%, it'll turn these off automatically so I don't get stranded. You can set that parameter at whatever percentage you want. So that's another really cool feature about this truck. And having the bigger battery. There's one thing else about the bigger battery that my brother Mike pointed out to me. And after driving this, it's absolutely true. There is a point in electric vehicles, even when you've owned them for a long time like we have, that you get range anxiety. Even though you know I'm 20 miles from home and the vehicle says, yeah, 50 miles left, you're like going, oh my gosh, I don't have much, I gotta make it home. I'm gonna drive nicer. And you always get home and you always have the amount the vehicle says you're gonna have when you get there. But range anxiety is still a real thing even after all these years. But what's funny is when range anxiety, say on the Ford, is at 50 miles, and I start going, I better really start making some decisions. Well, it's 50 miles on a vehicle that, depending on say I'm driving on the highway, I'm 250 miles of range, or around town I have 300 miles. But 50 miles by percentage is 25% of the battery I will never, ever use. Did I do that math right? Maybe not. But when you have 450 miles and you're going to get range anxiety down at 50 miles, well, your percentage of usable battery before range anxiety is significantly higher. It feels to me when driving this vehicle that I have twice the usable range before range anxiety. Even though it's not really twice the battery or twice the range, it is twice the range before range anxiety kicks in. I hope that makes sense. And to me, that's a really big deal. I don't know what else. What else? So once you get
Makes
inside
sense.
the truck, this is where you really feel the difference. Everything about it is premium. The dash, the leather, the fit and finish does not feel like a work truck. It feels like a Cadillac Escalade, and I love it. Or any other, pick your premium car or vehicle. It's dialed. So, but while we're here, there's a few other things I've noticed that I really like about this that isn't on the Ford. One, this doesn't require you to turn on the vehicle. You get in and put your foot on the brake, it's instantly on and ready to go. That one, you get in, you put on the brake, and you lean over and you hit the start button. Doesn't seem like a big deal, but once you don't ever have to hit a start button, you just get in and put on the brake and go, you realize the start button's silly. There's no reason for it on electric vehicles. Why make you do it? I like to just get in and go. This thing also has a heads-up display, which I absolutely love. Now, my Lightning doesn't have it. I don't know, it's a 2023. I don't know, honestly, if the 2024 has the heads-up display as an option. My new Ford F450 does have the latest heads-up display, and it gives you some of your directions, like your maps and your current speed, your cruise control settings, your autopilot features. But this one does it much better. The colors are brighter. The way it lays out the maps and the turns, instead of saying turn right in 0.2 miles, it'll show 6 lanes and show that you want to be in the third one over to get the right exit. And you see that on the heads-up display instead of knowing you have a turn and looking down here to see which lane you're supposed to be in. So definitely like the heads-up display a lot better in this. And the mapping a lot better. The dash here, I hated it at first because the steering wheel cuts off the top right and left corner of this display. You can't see it. And for me to get low enough to see through the wheel to see that, I put the wheel right now, it's as high as it go. I can move it in and out if I want. It doesn't fix it. I have to put the seat so low that I can't see over the hood. But you get used to it. I suddenly realized that there really isn't any useful information in the top right corner. It says it's 82 degrees over there, but they also put 82 degrees much bigger here where you can see it. And I wonder if they also figured out that they can't put information in the top left and right corner because it's useless. So I don't know how they missed on that. They had somebody way shorter than me always driving who didn't mind not seeing over the hood. My wife, when she drives this, she lifts the seat all the way up so she can see over the hood really good, and then you get those top corners cut off. But again, with a beautiful heads-up display and this, and the important information still visible within the arc of the steering wheel, totally fine. The switches we talked about, being able to control temperature up and down, just like this, instead of on a touch screen, I do like that better. So that's a nice feature. I love not having the shifter here. The cell phone charger is kind of cool. I thought it was kind of gimmicky that the charger's here and you can hide your phone, but I realize I do often put things down in here, and I like that the phone kind of comes and goes. This display here kind of pocket hides away as well and gives you more access. I've also noticed the vehicle has charging ports absolutely everywhere in it. No matter where you look, there's another charging port and another charging port. This is something that is really quite cool that isn't available on the Ford, or at least wasn't on mine, but that hooks on to your trailer tires. So your trailer tire pressure is displayed in the truck. And I've pulled trailers my whole life, and I've suffered from flat tires or blowouts, and usually blowouts don't happen if you're just running around town, because when you get a nail in your tire, not if, we all end up having to have tires repaired from nails or screws on the road. But when you do it in town, nothing happens. You pull in somewhere and you're like, oh, my tire's low. On your trailer, like, I need to get that fixed. But when you're on a road trip like I do, where you're really driving somewhere, when you get a hole in the tire, you don't notice it. You get low tire pressure, the tire heats up, it explodes and turns into a really bad day. So the fact that the truck actually comes with these sensors to put on the trailer, I think is pretty cool. I haven't stuck them on my trailers yet. I'm excited to do that and try them out, but to have the tire pressure displayed here is pretty cool function. So I think that's it. Oh no, there's another thing. So the Ford has an actual sunroof that opens and closes, and a shade that closes up so you don't get any sunlight through. For me, I like that better than the GMC, where it's just the skylight. You can't open and close it, which is fine. I never drive around with my sunroof open anyway. But I don't like the fact that it's like my Teslas. I always ended up with a hot head. I would have a cold body and a hot head from the sunlight coming in the window. And on both Teslas, I ended up putting a big mesh thing up there that didn't look great, that would keep the sun off my bald head. And so it kind of defeated the purpose. So I don't really like this. I love it right now, looking up the stars or looking at the clouds in the sky. And I'd love it to lay back my seat somewhere and look out. But I do wish I could close it like the Ford when I'm not trying to look out of it. So that's a negative for me. But for others, you might have enough hair insulating your head that you don't have a hot head and a cold body with this setup. So, or you just wear a hat. But me, I prefer the Ford setup over this one. All right, let's talk about the cruise control. I've loved, or autopilot, I forget, they all have different names for their particular setup. The Blue Cruise on the Lightning has been amazing. It wanders more than the Tesla, and it is a little quirky. The Tesla's far superior than the Blue Cruise on the Ford. But after having that truck and having Blue Cruise, I'm like, I'll never have another vehicle that can't let me just let go of the wheel and be hands-free, which the Lightning does. You don't have to keep pressure on it like my Tesla did. Tesla may have changed that now, I don't know, but we sold our Teslas in 23, and you still had to keep a little pressure on the wheel. Ford, it's truly hands-free. The Denali is hands-free and way superior. The Ford, when we're cruising along, if it's trying to stay between the lanes, it seems to hug the right-hand side more than anything. But if a car starts coming in towards you, it seems like it's just going to let you hit it. You always grab the wheel and kind of get away, and you're not hugging right window mirror touching a semi-truck. Whereas this vehicle, it seems to have sensors on it that if it's cruising in its lane, it's staying centered, and somebody starts drifting out of their lane, it creeps away from them, which to me is a huge safety feature, and I really like that. The other thing is, it surprised me when I first started using this. I turned it on, I set our speeds in Utah have pretty high freeway speeds, 75 and 85. I had the cruise control on 85, the autopilot on 85, and I'm in a middle lane, and it's coming up behind a car, and then my seat buzzed, and I got a notice on the dash that said passing. It turned on a turn signal, went into the next lane, passed the slow traffic, turned on the turn signal, went back to the middle lane, and it did it all on its own, like a Tesla does. And I didn't expect that. I got used to Ford, just like, I'll stay in my lane and do my thing. The other thing is, when speed zones change, this isn't jamming on the brakes. Ford, if I'm cruising in a 75 zone and the speed drops to 55, that thing's hitting the brakes and dropping you to 55, even if traffic's still doing 75. And I didn't like always having to just grab the autopilot, turn it off, turn the speed back up again and say, let me speed, and then keep going. So I like that this thing will, when the speed drops, it will wait for you to tell it to slow down, or at least it's not standing on the brakes. Okay, so I don't want to forget my favorite part about this truck, and I didn't think it would be as cool as it actually is, and that's the four-wheel steering. It's unreal to have a truck that the back end follows you around the corner. So if you've owned a truck, especially a big truck, you get in these smaller and smaller parking spaces, and sometimes you just can't get in because they're putting cars so close to each other. And so you'll end up having to back a truck into a stall to make it, because you just can't make it forward. Well, this doesn't even matter anymore. It doesn't matter how tight it is, how narrow the spots are. These could be the California parking stalls where they don't want any truck to ever come into town size stalls, if you know what I'm talking about. And you just whip it in, because the back end's going to follow you around and put you in the stall. It also has auto parking, and it does a better job than the Ford. I don't know, that's a software thing. That might be the four-wheel steering as well, but it does a really good job, parallel parking from either direction. pulling in forward, backing into stalls. It does a really, really good job. So that's my favorite thing. The four-wheel steering is unbelievable. It's amazing. I also like all the cameras. I like this camera in the rear view mirror. It's always clear. You don't have people's head in your way. It's using a camera and it's displayed here. And then all the different camera options on here. Of course, it has the 360 camera, but it has a lot more options where you can see the front right tires and the back, or the right tires or the left tires, front and back, and see it on the screen. So no excuses for curbing your rim and ruin your rim. You actually can see the curb up close based on all the cameras. So four-wheel steering for the win. I love this truck. All right, I'll try to do my best to summarize. In the end, I've got two electric trucks. The Ford Lightning has been my favorite vehicle of all vehicles of anything I've ever owned my whole life, which seems weird for such a plain Jane looking truck, but I've loved the Lightning. The GMC is a whole nother animal, and I can't say what's going to be better for you. The Lightning, I paid $80,000 for it. That was a year ago. They were harder to get. They're not selling really well. You can get them for $65,000, maybe better now. This is $100,000 or $99,875 or whatever it was, plus tax and license. So there's a significant price difference between the two. If your goal is like, I want light, I want fast, I want the quietest, smoothest ride, and the best value, the Lightning's probably it. It's an amazing buy, an amazing truck for a lot less money. If your goal is, I need all that extra range, the ability to pull the trailer and still get to the lake or to the cabin and back without range anxiety, and I want all the creature comforts and money isn't as much of an object, then definitely the GMC is the better truck. This all over round is a far superior product to the Lightning in that regard. So best value, I would say it's the Ford Lightning. Best truck, the GMC. For me and where I am in my life today, the truck I'm keeping, that one, the Lightning, is up for sale. So there's my review. They're both amazing vehicles. You can't go wrong with either one. But I'm excited to put 20,000 miles on this in the next year and see what other cool electric vehicles come out that I get to play with. There's my review. Hope it helped.